appreciate that Congresswoman Maloy is here with us today. And thank you, Celeste, for being willing to come today and share with us what is going on.
The title of my remarks today is "We Don't Need All the Government We're Paying For." Thank you. That's also how I spend all of my time right now. I am the chairman of the Regulatory Reform Subcommittee on the DOJ caucus. I assume, did Blake Moore talk about the DOJ caucus? Okay, so you know a little bit about what's going on there. I got everything that was on my wish list for Santa this year. I got on the Appropriations Committee. So as far as defunding things goes, that's the committee where you can defund things. Thank you. I'm really excited about that. I don't have my subcommittee assignments yet. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, which is what all of my background's in. It's really important to the state. And I know there I'm on the Fed Land Subcommittee and on the Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries Subcommittee, so things that are really important to Utah. And so I'm working hard to make sure that we spend the next 2 years. We've got a window of opportunity right now, and it will close if we don't take advantage of it. We have grown the regulatory state for the last 80 years. We barely ever even tapped the brakes in that time. In the 80s, we did for a little while. But right now, we have a chance to fundamentally change the way we think about government. We have the alignment of all three branches, which we've never had before on this topic. The court overturned the Chevron case this summer, and in several cases, yeah, that is worth a round of applause. In several cases, has basically dared Congress to step up and do our job better and not defer to regulatory agencies. We haven't had that kind of an alignment with the court in my lifetime. And then we also have an executive branch that's willing to weaken the executive branch. That never happens. So when, I get a lot of questions about what do you think Trump's gonna do? What do you think Trump's gonna do? And I always focus on that because he said, he formed DOJ. And I wanna say something quickly about DOJ because I know the media likes to be snotty about this. I've seen all the comments, oh yeah, we need 2 people running a government efficiency organization, blah, blah. But the thing that everybody seems to miss is DOJ is not a new government agency. These are 2 men who are successful in their own right, who have things to do, who've decided to take their time and be diagnosticians for the government. They're looking at the government and saying, these are the things that are inefficient, and they're giving it back to us to fix. We didn't create a new entity. This isn't gonna have to be funded forever. It's not gonna live forever. Thank you. I'm not giving you guys very good applause, because I don't wanna go over my time. But I'm really excited to be in the middle of this. This is what I've spent, a lot of you know, I spent the early years of my career working for a federal agency, and I saw the inefficiencies, and I saw the things that just don't make sense, but they are the way they are because that's the way they are. And that's what drove me to go to law school and try to get involved in policy. And now I'm here where I can make policy, and it's right when we have this moment where we can fix things. If we don't get moving quickly, that window's gonna close. I am really excited to see that Trump's coming out of the gates very serious about this. I'm excited to see that Congress is engaging so seriously on this. And I really think our courts are gonna back us on this. So I think the next 2 years are gonna look like a lot of chaos and a lot of drama. And the media is going to pounce on every time Republicans disagree with other Republicans. And they're gonna say, Republicans are in disarray. Republicans can't govern. Republicans don't know what they want. Republicans are gonna leave this country in a mess. Ignore all of that and watch what we're actually accomplishing. And I think 20 years from now, we're gonna look back on the 119th Congress as the pivot point where we started to get government back under control, where government started to be accountable again. Yeah, let's take a minute for that one. Now, I am an elected official, and so I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't stand here and brag about the accomplishments I had in my first year. So I'm 1 year in. I was there for half of the 118th Congress, which apparently is the least productive Congress in modern history. But I managed to get 3 bills signed into law. So one of them was the Good Samaritan Abandoned Hard Rock Mine Reclamation Act, which is one of those dumb things that we created just by having too much bureaucracy. So we have abandoned mines all over the country. A lot of them are in Utah. And in order to clean up a mine, you have to take on all of the liability that you would have if you were the one who caused whatever pollution or problems might exist in that mine. And some of these mines were abandoned 100 years ago, way before we had any environmental laws. So it creates a perverse incentive. Nobody wants to go in and clean up a mine, even though we all know they need to be cleaned up. We fixed that, created some limited liability so that third parties can go in and reclaim abandoned hard rock mines. It's common sense. It's something we've been working on for 25 years. I was in the right place at the right time, and we got that done. So that is law now. Thank you. I've also got one, Senator Lee and I did that one together. We also did this one together. The Utah State Parks Act, where we took the federal parcels that are inside of Utah's state parks, and then in Sevier County, a campground next to the state park that the state park's been managing, but it's on federal land. We turned them over to the state, so the state can manage our parks. Thank you. And we got Biden to sign that one. Maybe there are some good things about him not being totally in his right mind. So that one is now law. It'll be moving forward. Now my frustration is the agencies are saying they're going to start NEPA on that. It does not make any sense. NEPA requires agencies to consider alternatives before they make a decision. Congress just said to the agencies, you're going to turn these parcels over to the state. They don't have any alternatives. So now I'm working on that. We're going to introduce a bill that says when Congress tells an agency to do something specific, they do not have to do NEPA. Why consider alternatives and waste 2 to 5 years and millions of dollars when you don't have alternatives? You know what you have to do. So we're just going to keep knocking these things down. And then the third one, I just went blank on my own bill. Hang on, I have notes that I don't usually use. Oh, court. We just got a bill signed that allows Utah to hold federal court in Moab and Monticello. Do we have anybody from that part of the state here? That's a big deal. So for a long time, we could only hold federal court in Salt Lake and Provo. The last few years, we've been able to hold federal court in St. George, and the difference that's made in my district, where people don't have to travel to Provo or Salt Lake for federal jury duty or to participate in a hearing, is huge. And when I worked for UAC in St. George, that's when they created the Bears Ears National Monument, and when we had all the meetings and all the hearings, and I was going to all of those. And I would tell people all the time, from St. George, I can drive to Mexico faster than I can drive to Monticello. There's just no way to get from southwest Utah to southeast Utah. And so we've acknowledged that and allowed Utah to hold court in Moab and Monticello so that hopefully anyone in Utah who has federal jury duty doesn't have to travel more than 2 hours or 3 hours to get to court, which has not been the case. So again, it's a common sense thing. It doesn't seem that big, but it takes an act of Congress to do it. So those are the 3 bills that I have signed into law in my first year. I'm excited to see what we're going to do in the second year. Being on appropriations, a lot of those wins will come through the appropriations bills in the future, so I may not have as many standalone individual bills to stand up here and talk about, but I'm really excited about the opportunities we're going to have to make the government smaller and more accountable, and make sure that we're not paying for government just because we've always been paying for government and because government wants to be bigger. That's really all I have. I don't want to take a lot of your time. That's the message I wanted to deliver. I'm really excited that you're here doing what you're doing. Thank you for taking your time on a Saturday to get involved in politics. Gail, do you want me to take questions? I'm willing to. What's the plan? I'm willing to take questions until I run out of time if anybody has some.
Yeah, Celeste, I've been trying to get an answer on this recovery rebate program that's offered through the IRS. Not a lot of people know about it, but they said that under $40,000 income, you're entitled to a certain recovery on your allowance or what the IRS takes or something like that. I already filed for it, and not a lot of people know about it. Do you know anything about this recovery? It's called rebate recovery.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. It's not something I spend a lot of my time on, but I'm glad you asked this question because the answer is that's a casework question, and I forgot to bring that up. So, people call their congressman when they're mad about a big national policy, but you should also call when it's something like this, when you're dealing with the IRS and you don't know what paperwork to fill out, or you're dealing with the IRS and they're not getting back to you. Once I started working for a congressman, I was shocked at all the things we could help people with that I never would have thought to call about. And so now I worry about all the people who are out there living their lives, minding their own business, and just getting rolled over by government agencies because they don't know that they can call their congressman's office and get help with that. So if you're working on an IRS rebate, or if you're struggling with the VA, or if you're having a hard time with the BLM or the Forest Service or any of the alphabet soup agencies and you're getting frustrated, instead of spending 3 years banging your head against a wall, pick up the phone and call. And I have caseworkers. All of my colleagues have caseworkers who can help. Sorry, I can't hear you very well, and I don't know.
I already filed the form. I'm just wondering.
Reach out to my caseworkers, and we'll figure it out for you. Okay, somebody over here said I have a question.
So, in the past, the Biden administration, Mrs. Rangel, is pushing through they are ruining Utah.
Yeah.
Public lands, our fairs,
Yeah.
Grand Staircase, San Rafael. Is it going to be difficult to turn that around, Congressman?
No, it's going to be easy to turn it around.
Even yesterday, they passed something for Lake Powell.
Yeah.
They're closing 24 miles of OHV roads. So
Yeah.
just every day they're passing through everything they can until the inauguration.
Yeah, so for those of you who can't hear, sorry, I've had this head cold that everybody seems to be battling. My ears are congested, so maybe you can all hear better than I can. But if you couldn't hear her, she's saying just the last few days, the administration on their way out the door is leaving us all these landmines. You know, they're trying to push through all these policies they couldn't get through Congress about how we manage our land, how we access our land. They create a huge marine national monument to try to stop oil and gas. And the question is, how hard is it going to be to undo all that? It's going to be so easy to undo it, and we're going to do it right away. And frankly, they know it. So part of the plan is they're putting all these things in place because they know we're going to go right in and undo them. And then they're going to throw up their hands and say, oh, this is overreach. Republicans say they don't like overreach. So again, ignore the drama, ignore the hype, and watch what's actually happening. Anytime we're making the government smaller, we're working for you. Right here.
If we can get rid of chemtrails like Tennessee has done, we have had chemtrails in our skies for decades now, poisoning us with all kinds of chemicals, ruining the soil, making us get Alzheimer's with all the aluminum. And who is doing the chemtrails? And how do they get authority to do that poisonous? And when we don't even, most people don't even recognize what a real cloud looks like. They think these crisscrosses is how God made the sky, I guess.
Well, I wasn't aware that Tennessee had gotten rid of chemtrails, so I will ask my good friend, Mr. Burchett from Tennessee, how they got rid of chemtrails. And also, just a shameless plug, if any of you listen to the Political Head Trauma podcast out of Tooele, he was on it yesterday. I was supposed to be on it with him. I ended up being on a plane, but if you're a Tim Burchett fan and you like his thoughts on UFOs, listen to the Political Head Trauma podcast, right in the back.
Yes, have you considered seeking a written mandate against the agencies that won't turn over the park parcels?
Have we considered a written mandate against the agencies that won't turn over the park parcels? We just passed it. It just got signed into law a few weeks ago. So they're going to turn it over. But yes, if they won't turn it over, I would consider a writ of mandate. We're going to make sure they do it.
So they win. Will President Trump accelerate that?
Yeah.
Not worth the court's time.
Yeah. So right now there's no need to go to the courts because the executive branch is on our side in a week. A week and 2 days, I guess. In 9 days, everything changes drastically, which is why you're seeing all these desperate death rattles coming out where somebody, it's not President Biden because I don't think he knows, but somebody is signing all these things and pushing them out, and they know we're just going to overturn them. How am I on time? I've got 5 minutes. Okay, I've been paying attention to this side. Did anyone over here have a question? All right, anyone over here? Right here.
Are there any limits to executive orders?
Are there any limits to executive orders? Honestly, right now the answer is no. One of the things I'm talking to the Trump team about is if he'll be the president that acknowledges that there should be limits on executive orders and changes that, he can go down in history with George Washington as a statesman who was willing to give back power. And he's been really open to that conversation. He's got a lot of people around him advising him. We'll see what happens, but there should be limits. But right now, there really isn't an acknowledged limit to it.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the prayer breakfast every Thursday morning? Think about that.
Yeah. So there's a member prayer breakfast I go to on Thursday mornings. For me, it's been a really good experience. one, it's a great way to get to know a lot of my colleagues. In fact, it's a great way to get to know some of my colleagues I thought I knew and see a totally different side of them. And I'll give you an example, and I hope he's okay with this. I don't have his permission, but we've talked about it several times. One of the first times I went, Jody Arrington was sharing his testimony. He's the chair of the Budget Committee. And he talked about an experience he had where his pastor told him, you know, you say you trust Jesus, but you don't really trust Jesus. You keep praying that he'll, you know, deposit more grace in your account. Just write the check. If you really trust him, you just write the check. And I've talked to him a few times about how much that impacted me and how I've thought about that. And so he and I have kind of created a friendship because of that. He called me this week and he said, I need someone on the Budget Committee who really likes to cut things. And I know that's what you talk about a lot. And I know, because I know you from the prayer breakfast, I wouldn't know you if you didn't come there, but do you want to be on this committee? Now he's got to get permission from leadership, and I don't know how that's going to work. But I say all the time, Washington is a relationship-driven town, and I think when people hear that, they think like smoky back rooms, but it's really that kind of thing. When you get to know somebody and you kind of know their heart and their intent and what kind of person they are, then you decide whether you want to spend more time with them. And so going to the prayer breakfast has been a really good experience for me that way, but it's also been really, really nice in a town that's full of chaos and noise and making big things out of small things, to stop once in a while and focus with my colleagues on the things that are bigger than us, the things that last a lot longer than a 2-year cycle. Okay, I've got 3 minutes. Darren?
Well, first, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So proud to have you represent us.
Thank you.
In the last Trump administration, you know, we had hundreds of executive orders.
Yeah.
And promptly the Biden administration comes along and we rolled all that.
Yep.
So what can we do, what can you do, Congress and the Senate, to make that permanent, make those changes not just get rolled back in the next Democratic administration? How do we do that and get Congress to really embed these things permanently that can get along?
That's the $1 million question for this administration. And for those of you who can't hear him, he's saying the last Trump administration, he had hundreds of executive orders, and the Biden administration came in and undid all of them. So how do we do it better this time so they don't all get turned over? First of all, hopefully we elect a Republican in 4 years. That would help. But we're going to have to assume we won't and operate that way. And the answer is we have to codify these things. And that's why it's so important that Republicans act like we're all on the same team for the next 4 years, especially for the next 2 years. We have the trifecta, but we have a very, very small trifecta. And that's why I caution you that everyone's going to want to see Republicans knifing each other. That anyone in this country who doesn't want the government to be accountable is going to be delighted anytime we turn on each other. And I believe in debate. I think as Republicans, we should have robust debate and disagreement, but we've got to do it behind closed doors and get to a point where we have an agreement and we move forward together instead of stabbing each other in the back. And I think we're getting better and better at it, because the more of these things we can codify, it's harder to overturn laws. It happens, but it's really tough to do. Executive orders come and go, and they go back and forth all the time. Okay, I've got 1 minute, so I can do one fast question.
Celeste, Congressman Thomas Massey says every congressman from Utah has an APAC handler, and they must contact to get money and to decide how to vote on these real issues. Can you confirm, or are you prepared to say that Thomas Massey is a liar?
Okay, well, that is one of those questions like, have you stopped beating your wife? I know Thomas Massey, he's a friend of mine. I do not have an AIPAC handler. I do work with AIPAC, and I do support Israel, but nobody tells me how to vote. And I don't let anyone tell me how to vote. I answer to the people of the 2nd District. So with that, I am out of time. Thank you for letting me come speak to you.